I caught my stepson in a private moment, my surprising reaction. It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, the kind where the sun hung lazily in the sky, casting a soft golden glow through the curtains of our quiet suburban home. The clock on the kitchen wall ticked steadily toward 3 p.m. And I, Lydia, a 47-year-old woman with a life full of routine and predictability, was wiping down the countertops after lunch. Thomas, my husband, was at work, as he always was during the day, managing his construction crew with the same steady reliability he brought into our marriage 10 years ago. The house was silent, save for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the occasional chirping of birds outside. It was peaceful, too peaceful perhaps for what was about to unfold. Upstairs, Nathan, my 23-year-old stepson, was in his room. He'd moved back home after college a few months ago, claiming he needed time to figure things out. I didn't mind. He was a quiet presence, respectful enough, though we'd never been particularly close. There was always a polite distance between us, an unspoken boundary that came with being a stepmother to a young man who'd already been half-grown when I entered his life. That day, though, something shifted. Something I couldn't have predicted. I'd been downstairs, lost in my thoughts, when I heard it. A faint noise drifting from the upper floor. At first, I dismissed it as nothing unusual. Nathan was probably watching a video or playing one of those loud video games he sometimes got lost in. But the sound persisted, soft and rhythmic, tugging at my curiosity. I paused, sponge in hand, and tilted my head to listen. It wasn't loud enough to alarm me, but it was enough to make me wonder. Maybe he'd like a coffee, I thought. It had been a while since we'd had a real conversation, just the two of us. The idea felt innocent enough. A small gesture to bridge the gap that had always lingered between us. I set the sponge down, wiped my hands on a dish towel, and started up the stairs. The wooden steps creaked faintly under my weight, a sound I'd grown so used to that it barely registered anymore. The closer I got to Nathan's room, the clearer the noises became, muffled but distinct. My mind raced through possibilities. A movie, a podcast, maybe even a phone call. I reached the top of the stairs and noticed his door was slightly ajar, a thin sliver of light spilling into the hallway. I took a deep breath, ready to call out to him, to announce myself like any sensible person would. But then I stopped. Something held me back. A strange, inexplicable pull that rooted me to the spot. I took one more step, shifting my angle just enough to see inside. And that's when it happened. That's when everything changed. Nathan was sitting on his bed, his laptop balanced on his knees. The screen's glow illuminated his face, casting sharp shadows across his features. His hands were moving, quick and deliberate, and at first I thought he was typing or scrolling through something intense. An action scene maybe, or a heated gaming session. But then my eyes adjusted and I saw it. The reflection on the screen wasn't explosions or car chases. It was something else entirely, something private, something intimate. My blood turned to ice, draining from my face as a cold wave crashed over me. I realized exactly what Nathan was doing. For a split second I could have turned away. I could have retreated silently down the stairs, pretended I'd never seen a thing, and let the moment dissolve into the ether. But I didn't. I stood there, frozen, my heart hammering against my ribcage as the reality of it sank in. Nathan hadn't noticed me yet, too absorbed in his own world. But then the floor creaked beneath my foot, a tiny traitorous sound, and his head snapped up. Our eyes met. His face flushed crimson, a mix of shock and shame flooding his expression. He fumbled with the laptop, slamming the lid shut and yanking the earbuds from his ears. "Oh, Lydia, I'm sorry," he stammered, his voice cracking as he scrambled to pull a blanket over himself. The volume on his laptop, now unmuted, blared for a brief, mortifying second before he silenced it completely. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. I managed, my voice barely a whisper as I hovered in the doorway. My cheeks burned, a strange warmth spreading through me despite the embarrassment. I should have been horrified, outraged even, but instead my mind was a chaotic swirl of thoughts I couldn't pin down. I stepped back quickly, nearly tripping over my own feet. "I'll just, go," I mumbled, turning and fleeing down the hall. I pressed my hands to my face as I reached the kitchen, my breath coming in shallow gasps. What the hell was that? I whispered to myself, leaning against the counter for support. My heart wouldn't stop racing. I just walked in on my stepson in the most private of moments, and instead of feeling purely disgusted or angry, I was what? Conflicted? Curious? I shook my head, trying to banish the thoughts. Stop it, Lydia. I scolded myself. You're the one who should have knocked. This is your fault. But was it? Nathan was 23, an adult by any measure, and I was 47, a woman who'd seen her share of awkward moments in life. I'd been married before Thomas, had a daughter who'd long since moved out, and I'd navigated plenty of messy situations. Yet nothing had prepared me for this. The shame I felt wasn't just about what I'd seen. It was about how I'd reacted, how I hadn't turned away fast enough, how a tiny, reckless part of me had lingered. I busied myself with meaningless tasks, reorganizing the spice rack, wiping down the already clean counter. Anything to distract from the storm brewing inside me. When Nathan appeared in the doorway a few minutes later, I nearly dropped the jar of cumin I was holding. He'd changed into a fresh shirt, his hair slightly mussed, and he kept his eyes fixed on the floor. Lydia, he said, clearing his throat. I'm really sorry. I thought I'd closed the door. I didn't mean for you to, see that. I waved a hand, trying to dismiss the tension. No, it's fine. I should have knocked. It's my fault, really. My voice trembled despite my best efforts to sound casual. We stood there, the silence stretching between us like a tightrope neither of us dared to cross. It wasn't just any silence, it was heavy, charged, unlike anything we'd shared before. We'd lived in this house together for years, but this was the first time I felt like I was truly seeing him and he me. I should, start dinner, I said abruptly, turning toward the fridge. Thomas will be home soon. It was a lie. He wouldn't be back for hours, but I needed an escape. Nathan nodded, his gaze lingering on me for a moment longer than necessary before he retreated upstairs. I watched him go, my mind a tangle of guilt and something else, something I refused to name. Dinner that night was unbearable. Thomas was still at work, so it was just Nathan and me at the table, the clinking of forks against plates the only sound breaking the silence. We didn't look at each other, didn't speak. The air felt thick, suffocating, and I wondered if he could hear my heartbeat as loudly as I could. I kept replaying the moment in my head, the shock on his face, the way my own body had betrayed me with that strange warmth. What was wrong with me? The next few days passed in a blur of forced normalcy. Nathan and I avoided each other, exchanging only the briefest of nods or mumbled greetings. But the tension didn't fade, it grew. It was there in the way our eyes darted away too quickly, in the way I'd catch myself listening for his footsteps upstairs. I told myself it would pass, that we'd move on and forget. But deep down I knew better. One afternoon about a week later, Nathan found me in the living room. I was flipping through a magazine I wasn't really reading, trying to drown out the restless hum in my mind. He sat down on the couch across from me, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. Lydia, he began, his voice hesitant but determined. About the other day. I'm still embarrassed. I don't want this to ruin things between us. I'm really sorry. I set the magazine down, forcing a smile. Oh, Nathan, don't worry about it. I've had my share of embarrassing moments too. To lighten the mood, I told him about the time I tripped over a curb in front of a crowd at a farmer's market, spilling an entire basket of tomatoes, and the time I'd accidentally called my old boss mom during a meeting. He chuckled, his shoulders relaxing slightly, and for a moment, it felt like we'd turned a corner. But then he said something that stopped me cold. I guess we're even now, he murmured, his eyes dropping to the table. I frowned, tilting my head. What do you mean? He rubbed the back of his neck, hesitating, as if he'd let slip something he hadn't meant to. But then he took a deep breath and continued, his voice low. I've seen you too. The same way. You just didn't know about it. My breath caught, a jolt of electricity shooting through me. What? I whispered, the word barely audible. Nathan's face flushed, but he didn't back down. It was a while ago. I never told you because I was too embarrassed. But I never forgot it. It's been my little secret. Something I couldn't get out of my head. The room seemed to tilt. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. His words weren't just a confession. They were a sledgehammer, shattering the fragile boundary I'd clung to for years. I stared at him and he stared back, and in that moment we both knew this wasn't just a conversation. It was a turning point. From that day on, everything changed. The distance that had once defined us melted away, replaced by a pull I couldn't explain. We started spending more time together. Small, seemingly innocent moments that piled up like kindling. We'd watch movies on the couch, our laughter mingling in the air, our hands brushing accidentally as we reached for the popcorn. I told myself it was nothing, that I was imagining the tension, but every touch, every glance fueled something I couldn't ignore. One night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling as the clock ticked past midnight. Thomas snored softly beside me, oblivious to the storm raging in my mind. All I could think about was Nathan. His confession, the way he'd looked at me, the way my own body responded despite my better judgment. This couldn't go on. I had to set a boundary, to stop whatever this was before it spiraled further. With that resolve, I slipped out of bed, my bare feet cold against the hardwood floor, and made my way to Nathan's room. His door was slightly open, just like that first day. A dim light glowed inside, and I stepped forward, my heart in my throat. He was asleep, sprawled across the bed, the covers tangled around his legs. But my eyes weren't on his face. They were drawn lower, to the unmistakable outline beneath the thin sheet. My breath hitched, a storm of conflicting emotions crashing through me. I should have turned away, should have run back to my room and locked the door on this madness. But I didn't. I stood there watching him, feeling the heat rise in my chest. When I finally retreated, my mind was a battlefield. I lay awake for hours, wrestling with the truth I couldn't suppress. I didn't want to stop this. The boundaries were gone, and with each passing day, the pull between Nathan and me grew stronger. Then came the night that changed everything. Thomas was asleep upstairs, dead to the world as always, when I heard the front door crash open. Nathan stumbled in, reeking of whiskey and swaying on his feet. He knocked over a lamp in the entryway, the shatter of glass echoing through the house. I bolted out of bed, pulling a robe over my nightgown, and rushed to him before the noise could wake Thomas. "Nathan!" I hissed, grabbing his arm. "What are you doing? Be quiet." His eyes, glassy and unfocused, locked onto mine. A slow, lopsided smile spread across his face. "Lydia, are you real?" he slurred, his voice thick with alcohol but achingly sincere. I sighed, steadying him as he leaned against me. "Come on, you can't go upstairs like this. Let's get you to the kitchen." I guided him through the dark house, his weight heavy against my side. His gaze roamed over me, lingering in a way that made my skin prickle. "You're beautiful, you know that," he mumbled. "Have you always been this way? Or did I just never notice?" My stomach flipped, but I pushed the feeling down. "That's enough, Nathan. I'm making you coffee." I sat him at the table and turned to the counter, fumbling with the coffee maker. But then I heard a crash. The mug he'd been holding slipped from his hands, spilling across the counter. "Nathan!" I whispered, grabbing a towel. "Be careful." He just smiled, unfazed. "Were you always this sweet?" I cleaned up the mess, my hands shaking. "We couldn't stay here, Thomas might wake up." "All right, upstairs," I said, slipping my arm around him again. But quietly. I led him to his room, his steps unsteady, his breath warm against my neck. He needed to change, he was a mess, but he couldn't manage it alone. I hesitated, then reached for his shirt, unbuttoning it with trembling fingers. The air thickened, the silence pressing down on us. Nathan's breathing slowed as I worked, his eyes locked on mine. Then he spoke, his voice soft but firm. "I'm not playing this game anymore, Lydia." I froze, my hand still on his shirt. "What?" "We both caught each other once," he said, his gaze unwavering. "And that's it? You don't think about it at all? I know it crosses your mind before you sleep." A shiver ran through me, my feet rooted to the floor. "Nathan, this isn't right," I said, but my voice betrayed me, quivering with uncertainty. He stepped closer, his smile sharp and knowing. "We passed the point of deciding what's right a long time ago. Stop lying to yourself." His fingers brushed my cheek and I couldn't look away. Then his lips found mine, and the world fell silent. Every doubt, every fear dissolved in that kiss. I didn't pull away, I couldn't. My hands trembled as I let the straps of my robe slip from my shoulders. "You're right," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Let's not play this game anymore." I sank onto the bed, Nathan leaning over me, his eyes warm and certain. "Don't be afraid," he murmured. "Everything is right." I shivered, my breath uneven. Nathan, I'm scared. I admitted, the words slipping out before I could stop them. He smiled, leaning close to my ear. Thomas mustn't wake up, he whispered, and I understood. Silence was our shield. My body trembled as he moved, the heat between us overwhelming. I clutched the sheets, biting back every sound, every gasp, as the world narrowed to just us. Nathan was drunk, reckless, but I didn't care. I let go, surrendering to the rush, the forbidden thrill of it all. When it was over, I laid him down, covered him with a blanket, and locked his door behind me. I showered in silence, the hot water washing away the evidence but not the truth. As I slipped into bed beside Thomas, my mind was calm, eerily so. It was just a moment, I told myself, a reckless burst of desire. But I knew better. This wasn't the end. Bigger things were coming, more intense things. And Thomas would find out eventually. The story isn't over yet. There's more to come. More secrets, more chaos, more everything. Stick around. You won't want to miss what happens next. Hey, if you've made it this far with me, thank you for sticking around to hear this story. It's not over yet, bigger, wilder things are still ahead. And I can't keep telling it without you. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications, so you don't miss a single twist coming your way. Trust me, you won't want to sleep on what's next. It's going to get even crazier. I'd also love to hear what you think. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Have you ever had a moment that turned your life upside down? Drop a comment below. Every thought you share keeps me going and inspires me to keep this story alive. Our community is growing, and your support means everything to me. Let's see what's next together. Catch you in the next one.